Hello, and thank you for joining us today for the Lux Research webinar. Is Cosmo Laszlo, Director of Research Products here at Lux. So, for those of you on the call who aren't familiar with Lux, I'll provide a quick overview up front to put things in context. Lux is an organization that helps companies grow through tech innovation, and we do it by providing quality data from primary research, fact-based analysis, and opinions that challenge traditional thinking. So making decisions today around tech innovation is extremely complicated, as many of the folks on the line know. Between doing market landscapes, assessing new technologies, avoiding hype technology, and then really making sure that the company doesn't miss out on new and disruptive technologies that can help move the needle, really requires a lot of strategic decisions. And that's where Lux comes into play. And we do it for what we refer to as the Lux Difference. It's really made up of three very important components. It's our technical expertise, our primary research, and our advanced analytics capabilities. So from a technical expertise perspective, 75% of our analysts come to us with backgrounds in science and engineering and carry advanced degrees. They also bring strong business acumen to the table because we're constantly out scouting for companies developing disruptive technology, but we also feel it's really important for them to be rooted in technology so that they can understand what technologies are really going to have potential. The second piece is our primary research. We conduct over 5,000 interviews on an annual basis looking at companies developing disruptive technologies, as well as writing research reports on topics such as artificial intelligence and many others, which we'll inform the group about today. And then the third piece is our advanced analytics capabilities. We're a strong believer in practicing what we preach, so we've developed our own proprietary analytics engine, which really provides our clients with an in-depth, comprehensive view into technology being developed globally. As a matter of fact, we're just launching a new deliverable called Lux Text Pages, which are driven by our analytics engine. This is really a trusted single destination for data and insight about the most important technology innovations. And it's curated and analyzed by subject matter experts. It's really a place for clients to learn about new technologies and stay up to date on news, patent filings, investments, etc. And you can also find evaluations on key players surrounding a given technology, from startup to large organizations. And we pair this with thoughtful insight from our analyst. So it's really a great opportunity to stay ahead of and stay abreast of technology developments. So to bring this all to life, let me transfer it over now to Cosmo Laszlo, who will walk us through the AI adoption minefield. Cosmo?
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you very much, Kevin, and great to be on this webinar with you all today. So my name is Cosmo Laszlo. I am Director of Research Product at Lux. And at Lux, we cover so much of AI adoption. We cover a lot of the startups and large players that are developing innovations. We help our clients with their own adoption challenges, but internally, we also use a lot of the same tools and those capabilities to develop new innovations within Lux. So out of all those learnings, out of all that experience, we put together this webinar to really talk about navigating the AI adoption minefield and how you might do it for your organization over the coming years. So the agenda for today is in three parts. Number one, we're going to talk about the motivation. Why is it important for folks on the line to get the interest on AI and to do so pretty quickly? Number two, talking about pitfalls as you begin your AI journey, some of the pitfalls to avoid. Number three, finally wrapping up with best practices as you develop your own AI roadmap to put it all together. So to jump into the motivation, why worry about AI? Why is this a big deal that should really be, front of mind as you think about the future of your organization and innovation within your organization? Well, some of the leading indicators come from the best positioned, fastest growing companies over the past decade and prior to that. So when we look at Google, one of the most successful companies in terms of digital transformation, they're actually undergoing a massive pivot right now. They've really succeeded over the past 10 years around building a world that is, mobile first, bringing information to people on their mobile devices and laptops and so forth. But now that whole company is consciously shifting to a world that is AI first, right? This is a massive bet that Google is making towards AI. They're certainly not alone. So looking at another company that's certainly been around longer than Google and seen a lot of computer revolutions, this is IBM CEO saying that she's 100% convinced that every job that we know today will be affected by artificial intelligence. And how IBM will respond will be its greatest business challenge. And I would argue it'll be many businesses' greatest challenge for how will they be affected by AI. Now, both of those are, of course, digital native firms, right? So Google is a digital native, IBM is a digital native. What about companies that are not? What about companies that, for example, work with cows? Well, even there, we see the impact of AI starting to grow. So this is a recent investment by Cargill into a company that develops AI-powered facial recognition to help improve the health and milk productivity outcomes from cows, right? So whether you're a digital native, whether you're more of a strong player in other industries, AI is already beginning to make an impact. Now, those are more anecdote driven, but as Kevin mentioned earlier in the introduction, we've done a lot of work on our side and undertaken one of the biggest data science projects in terms of evaluating the innovation landscape, and crunched through more than 2,500 emerging technologies using something we call the Lux Tech Signal. And that's really a summary of the trends, looking at all the world's patents, papers, funding, and more, to see what technologies are growing the fastest in terms of innovation interest. What is the world turning its innovation interest to? And out of those 2,500, the leaderboard was really dominated by technologies related to things like data science, like neural networks, like deep learning, and other types of AI. So from our side, we're pretty convinced, whether we're looking at the anecdotes and the primary research, whether we're looking at the more analytic side of things, AI is poised to make a really big impact on the future of how businesses are run and how they find growth. Now, despite that interest, there remains a lot of confusion around how to actually go about it. So this is a quote about an organization that has, over the years, literally spent billions of dollars on software, and now they're beginning to shift towards AI. And this is representative of what many companies struggle with in terms of their approach to AI today, which is that nobody had a clue how to properly buy, field, and implement AI. And that's not because they were, not good at their jobs or incompetent, but rather there's not really a black box that really defines an AI system that is perfectly suited. At least not today. A lot of the key elements have to be put together, and that's a really big challenge for anybody to undertake. And so that's really what the rest of the presentation is all about, right? When you do have that deer in the headlights moment coming and somebody within your organization says, hey, we need to start this new AI project. Can you lead it for us? Or can you help contribute to it? How can we do that most effectively? So how do we get good at managing AI deployments? And to start talking about that, let's start with some common pitfalls. So this is really part 2 of the presentation, 3 pitfalls to avoid as you start your AI journey. Number 1 is being thoughtful about what flavor of AI you jump into. So for example, one of the variants of AI that gets a lot of attention these days is deep learning. Deep learning is one of the hottest subsets of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it might be tempting to say, well, if this is the hottest area of deep learning, of AI, we should just start there. Let's start with deep learning. We would argue that's actually a pitfall. You really want to start with the data science fundamentals. You don't need the most advanced AI to start. You really want to build that baseline of a really strong foundational data science team that starts to get you early wins and that it's accessible and easily understandable, right? Think of it as the contrast between, say, a Toyota Corolla and a Formula One car, right? That's the analogy here between simple data science versus really complex deep learning. There are some tools that you really do need for high-end applications, right? If you're in a Formula One race, that's exactly the tool you'd need. But if you're just going to pick up your kids from daycare or go to the grocery store, a much more flexible tool is simple fundamental data science. And so that's generally where we recommend that people start, is building out that core capability and working up towards deep learning if you really need to, if it's really suitable for your application. And we see this in our research as well. So we talk to a lot of different developers and solution providers around AI and machine learning. And so within the field of materials informatics, which is applying some of these data science and machine learning innovations to develop improved materials, one of the companies that earned a rare Lux take of positive, we have a 5-point scale that goes from strong caution to strong positive. So this is one of the ones that was rated on the high end of the scale. Questech develops high-performance alloys. It's flown on missions like those of SpaceX, but actually does so using some relatively old-school data science that uses materials property databases and predictive models. Conversely, a much newer company that adopts high-end artificial intelligence, Lumient, actually just gets a take of wait and see. So although we're tremendously excited about where this company is going in the future, if you need to implement something today, it's the more fundamental data science company that gets the better Lux take. And that kind of applies across the board. So what you see here is the Lux Innovation Grid that we produce for many of the different innovation areas that we cover. And you see here business execution on one axis, technical value on the other axis. And if we zoom in and look at the positioning of some of these companies, it turns out that the companies that do more traditional data science routinely get the better Lux takes, whereas the ones that are more early stage advanced AI are a little bit further behind. So we do see this kind of spectrum of maturity. So that was pitfall number one, starting with fundamental data science as opposed to jumping into deep learning right away. Pitfall number two that we wanted to talk about is how smart is independent AI today. So there's a lot of news. Every day we're bombarded with news that AI has made some amazing breakthrough, right? For example, here we can see the headlines about Google's AlphaGo and how they beat the human champ in what is arguably the most complex board game that we have. I mean, that's an amazing achievement. And we see these kind of headlines every day. But take that same company, right? Take Google and all of their amazing AI and machine learning talent. They've taken that and also applied it to Google Photos. So if you use Google Photos, there will actually be AI algorithms within Google Photos that will look at images like this. You see this set of 3 images, nice mountains on the left and right, and a group of folks in the middle, and it'll try to automatically suggest a panorama. And so here's the result of what that AI-powered auto-suggestion is. You get this kind of totally out of proportion meshing that defies common sense. And it kind of exposes that despite all of the amazing, very niche breakthroughs that AI has made, it still fails in a lot of very common sense ways in relatively simple tasks. Now, for Google Photos, this is not the end of the world, right? You just don't use that photo. But can you really trust this kind of fragility in terms of making business decisions within your organization? And that's really where we get into human-in-the-loop systems. So this is pitfall number 2, not supervising AI deployments closely enough. So one of the companies that we've spoken to that did get a positive Lux take uses VIA. It's actually VIA that uses predictive maintenance software. And what they do is they try to anticipate when electricity grid infrastructure is going to need predictive maintenance. So they're working with, for example, Japan's TEPCO Power Company to help that country's power grid running smoothly. And so what VIA's AI algorithms will do is it'll actually preemptively look to take down infrastructure, but offer to explain a reason why the equipment is starting to fail. So that it really gets a conversation going, if you will, between the AI algorithm and a human, so that the AI is not making a decision unilaterally, but rather it's part of a human-in-the-loop system where explainability is very, very important. And the third and final pitfall that we wanted to highlight in the second act is bias. Being vigilant against biasing your AI is incredibly important. As an example of this, there's a MIT study, a project called Gender Shades, that actually looked at different commercial face classification AI algorithms. And these are important. I mean, they're used in security cameras, immigration, criminal justice, even products like glasses for visually impaired people. And what the study found is that there was a dramatic difference in accuracy between, shown in this case, white males versus black females. And the reason for this is that often a lot of these algorithms are trained on biased data sets. In this case, for example, having far more light-skinned male faces in the training data set for the AI, which rather predictably then kind of shows up in how the AI behaves. It's really bias at work, and it's something that we have to be extremely vigilant about as we start to deploy and train these AI systems. We are beginning to see this kind of vigilance in some of the companies that we cover. So, for example, Numerate is a startup that we've profiled that looks at developing an AI platform for designing drug-like molecules for hard-to-target diseases. And what Numerate did that's clever is that they have already incorporated a statistical model to handle bias preemptively. So they use a lot of publications to train their algorithms, and so they have an ongoing model to help guard against bias. This is the kind of stuff that's really important as we start to implement more and more of these AI models into businesses. And so we've covered some of the key pitfalls. These are still very much open problems. We're going to be talking about them, this year, but also 2 years, 5 years down the road. Nonetheless, a lot of these systems are going into production now, right? Businesses are starting to use them. So what are some of the best practices that we can talk about today? And so that really leads us to part 3, the development of your AI roadmap. What are some of the best practices to put into production? And then how do we kind of take all those pieces and develop a roadmap out of it? The first best practice that we would strongly emphasize is getting buy-in from your CEO, but at the same time, starting small and iterating quickly to show some return on investment. And so let's unpack that a little bit. The kind of buy-in for real AI adoption does need to start at the very top. So this is what good looks like. This is the CEO of Siemens talking about digital transformation, including AI and data analytics, saying, there's really 2 choices. Siemens can either be part of this AI and broader digital revolution, be part of it and shape it, or we can wait and be transformed by others. So ideally, your company already has that vision. If not, you might need to kind of build up the business case for it. Now, once you do get started, there's not really a best time or a perfect way to jump into AI. A lot of it is getting experience, starting small. You're probably going to fail at first, so it's important to fail fast and fail cheap. Start with small projects, maybe a 3-month trial with a particular vendor, look to gain experience, and then iterate quickly from there as you kind of hone in on what is exactly the right data set, the right algorithm, the right vendor, the right problem that you're looking to solve for. And it is getting cheaper and cheaper to experiment with AI. So for example, say you work in machine vision and you want to tackle a machine vision problem, well then actually deep learning is a great way to go about that. And now Amazon's Web Services arm is offering a deep learning machine vision camera for just $249. That comes pre-trained with some models. You can already start to experiment and see, hey, will AI actually make a difference for my, say, factory that utilizes machine vision? The second best practice we wanted to highlight is upscaling continuously and expanding perspectives to really make the best use of the shifting AI landscape. So as an example, Python. A lot of people think of the big scary snake. It's actually the most prominent programming framework that has emerged for machine learning. This is part of a survey of a leading developer community that really shows the lead that Python has built up as the tool of choice for AI developers. Now, it's not to say that everybody on this call should go out and learn how to program in Python, but it is important to get to know what are some of the barriers that AI teams face at work. If you do hire an AI team, if you do build an AI team, what are some of the key problems that they're likely going to encounter that you'll need to help them through? So you can see here some of the leading ones, like dirty data, lack of data science talent, lack of management support, and so forth. And we'll cover a couple of these in this presentation. One of the big ones is lack of data science talent. Building an AI team can be very expensive. Everybody wants to hire these folks, and so there's kind of that classic supply and demand problem. But one of the really interesting things is just how much global talent is emerging in different parts of the world. So what this map shows, is TensorFlow usage around the world. TensorFlow is the most downloaded AI platform out there. It's increasingly used by a lot of companies, big and small. And perhaps as expected, there's a bright red hotspot in Silicon Valley, also around places like Boston and New York. But look at Texas, for example. Look at Germany and France and the UK. Look how much activity there is in China, in South Korea and Japan, India. There's a lot of AI talent out there, and we're seeing increasingly global, diverse teams that really tap into this. A good example of this is Google has just opened up a new China AI R&D center. And the boss of that effort says, frankly, we want to work with the best AI talent wherever in the world it is. And the last best practice that we want to highlight is really embedding AI teams within real business challenges. So I would say that some of the hard but obvious problems here, if you have dirty data, if you don't have enough financial support, or you don't have enough people on your team, those are hard problems, but you kind of know when you solve those problems. But the ones that will really get you further down the road are these ones. Do you have a clear question to answer? Are your results going to be used by decision makers? Can you explain the results of the data science to others? And that has a lot to do with how teams are structured and how they're embedded. So a classic trap is to hire a team of very, very smart people. You get your data scientists together and you kind of seclude them, right? Insulate them from the business, and then hope that after a year or two or three, they're going to come back with an amazing innovation. And generally that doesn't work. As cliche as avoiding silos is, it's very important to try to embed your data scientists so that, day in and day in, they're talking to customers, whether it's internal customers or external customers, so that they always know exactly what business question they're answering and why. And so with that, we wanted to wrap up the slide part of the presentation with building your AI roadmap. So let's take all the things that we talked about and put them on a strategic roadmap looking out to the next few decades. So AI, probably in the long term, as the CEO of Google says, it's probably the most important thing that humanity has worked on. Long term, this is going to have an amazing impact on the world, but Does that help us today in 2018? No, we're just getting started. So today, as we're just getting started, we want to get those data science fundamentals right, build good teams, and start by tackling transparent and relatively simple problems as we build up the data science practice within your own organization. You want to make sure you sync up with your CEO's vision from day one so that you start to show returns on investment relatively quickly. As you deploy more and more models, make sure you fight against bias and that you supervise your AI closely. As you build out your team, definitely look broadly, tap into the best talent around the world, and keep upskilling yourself. And then keep the AI team embedded day in and day out, and eventually you'll have to look across the entire firm in terms of rescaling and adapting and finding more cross-functional collaboration between data science teams and conventional roles. And so with that, thank you very much for your attention. We're now going to switch gears to take questions from the audience. So as Kevin said earlier, if you do have questions, please do type it into the questions box, and we'll do our best to get to them all. And I believe we already have a couple coming in.
Kevin? Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Cosmin. Boy, certainly sounds like from the presentation that companies need to be on their way looking into artificial intelligence. And if they're not, they certainly need to start the exploration process to really figure out how it's going to impact their organization. But when I hear about things like facial recognition of cows, it really makes me realize that everybody is going to be impacted. So again, as we're waiting for questions to come in, I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask. You did a version of this talk at our executive client conference a little bit earlier this year, and you were telling me about a client and how we could potentially help around that topic. I thought it would make an interesting case study. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the slides I showed talked about CEO buy-in, and this client that we were working on had a problem where their CEO it wasn't even on the radar for them that AI would be something that they should be looking at or that it would disrupt their business. And so our client wanted help in building up the business case for AI internally. And so we went out, we did research on their industry and found some of their direct competitors as well as some potential partners that are making good strides with AI and are already starting to show meaningful differences for their business. So we essentially compiled a group of case studies that our client was able to go to their CEO with to really help push for this initiative. And in the end, they went out and started to forge some partnerships within the industry to get started.
Excellent, excellent. So another question, I noticed you brought up a couple of different companies, Questech and Lumient, during the presentation. Can you tell us a little bit more about the type of information you gather on these startups?
Yeah, absolutely. So we highlighted a little bit about those companies, but the in-depth evaluation that we do is really quite unique within our industry. So we have our subject matter experts, the scientists and engineers, reach out to the CEOs and CTOs of these companies and really do in-depth interviews with them to understand the technology inside out, understand the business and opportunities and markets. And the results are these 5-page written company profiles that are extremely in-depth, available on many companies on our member site, so that very quickly you can get up to speed on what a particular company is doing in the space. And that includes a 10-point scorecard that looks at quantifying the progress of the company in terms of things like partnerships and IP and management team and technology. And that's a really nice way to compare companies like we saw in the Lux Innovation Grid.
Excellent, excellent. And so to that end, that brings up a question that came in that may tie into that. You're talking about individual players, but there are a lot of players out there. How do you sort of evaluate the full space in terms of who might be a good partner to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the areas where Lux is able to really deliver value proposition for clients because our team is so massive. I mean, it's a full-time job for many people to talk to all these companies. And so we're really able to drive efficiencies for the companies that we work with because they don't have to hire dozens of people to look at a particular space. We already have done that and have that research. But yeah, a lot of it is kind of going out to conferences, doing these phone interviews, doing secondary research, and really kind of understanding what are the best positioned companies and doing in-depth evaluations of them.
Excellent, excellent. And so I know this presentation is about artificial intelligence, but you referenced other industries, other technologies. What other technologies does Lux cover?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the fascinating parts about Lux is the breadth of the coverage. So overall, there's 4 main areas. They range from materials innovation, so topics like 3D printing, materials informatics, graphene, advanced alloys, topics like that. We also have energy. So the world is undergoing an incredible energy transition. And so we cover topics like electric vehicles, advanced batteries, solar, wind, the digitized grid, and so forth. Then we also have consumer choices in food, health, and wellness. And that looks at agricultural innovation. It looks at digital devices for improving health outcomes, food or nutrition, and so forth. And then lastly, kind of like we highlighted today, digital transformation is the 4th major part of our coverage. And there we look at not just AI and data science, but also things like blockchain, industrial IoT, sensors innovation, and so forth.
Excellent, excellent.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground today, and I think one question from my side for you, Kevin, is now how do clients typically engage with Lux? If people want to get started, what does that process look like?
Sure. Excellent. It's a great question, Cosmin. So Lux works with clients really in 2 primary methods. One through an intelligence membership subscription service, and then we also have a full consultancy within the company, and we can do bespoke custom consulting engagements, and that can range anything from technology assessments, in-depth market landscapes. We can do tech deployment workshops with clients to really help them understand and look at how their company can deploy technologies. And then from the intelligence membership side, it's really 3 primary benefits that our clients receive from that. First is access to all of the primary research that we conduct via our member site. It gives clients access to reports on topics like artificial intelligence and others in areas like digital transformation and the other areas you just mentioned. The second piece is they have access to all of the companies that we profile. So our clients may have an interest in these companies as partners, suppliers, acquisition targets, and this really gives them a very in-depth view in terms of those companies to help them make decisions on who might be right for them. And then the third piece is clients have access to our analysts on an ongoing daily basis. And this really helps them make sense of the data and the information that we provide. So it's not just a case of us doing a really good job conducting primary research. It really provides a vehicle where clients can work together with us and help understand how they can make that applicable to their organization. So we really work with companies to help them on this journey to help take advantage of technology to really grow their business. So really to wrap it up, I think what we do is we help companies grow through tech innovation. I wanted to thank everybody for taking time today to be with us for this webinar. We will make the slides available, and if we didn't get to your question, we will be getting back to you following the webinar, and we'll answer those questions as well. So again, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting again in the future.